This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and I want to remind you guys, as always, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of whenever we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please give us a 5-star rating, write us a nice review. It's very appreciated, very helpful. Allow us to see what you guys like, dislike, ways you can improve, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. And the Texans have seemed to find a way to give us a lot to talk about during this offseason, which I very much appreciate. Obviously, no sports, so we kind of gotta get what we can get. And the Texans have given us the content that we crave. I try to say crave and thrive at the same time. Crave, it's a weird word, but that we crave in this time. Obviously, with no live sports, and for that we are all appreciative. So, as has been well documented, not both, but on this podcast and on many other podcasts and platforms and networks and what have you, the Texans traded their best receiver, one of their best players on the team, earlier this offseason, though, again, trade not official because of the physical situation. That's still a little interesting, but I suppose it's going to go through. We'll see what happens. But, again, physical still have to be taken. But with that, they needed another receiver to replace him. Now, they signed Randall Cobb, which, cool, but that doesn't give you enough to make up for everything DeAndre Hopkins gave you. So, they tried something else. They decided to trade for a receiver that has been on trade block at least for a little bit. It seems like he was going to get traded this offseason somewhere. Though the Texans weren't necessarily on the top of people's minds because, again, he costs a lot of money. They are talking about not wanting to pay Hopkins a lot of money. It seemed kind of contradictory, but hey, to each their own. So they decided to trade for Brandin Cooks from the Rams. They sent a 2020 second-round pick, their 57 overall, which is, I think, their own second-round pick, because they got the second-rounder from the Cardinals. They didn't send that one. They sent their own to the Rams for Cooks in a 2022 fourth. So that's 3 drafts from now, which is, that's interesting, but whatever. Cooks is only 26th. And the Rams acquired him and a 4th-round pick from the Patriots before the 2018 draft in exchange for a 1st-round pick. The Rams then signed him to a 5-year, $81 million extension. And also, I believe the Saints traded him to the Patriots for a 1st-round pick. So this is his 4th team in 5 or 6 years. So like I just said, he's only 26. He's still pretty young, but the fact that he's been moved around this much is kind of interesting. The Rams, apparently, according to this article on ESPN.com, will incur $21.8 million in dead cap money by trading Cooks. They had already paid him a $4 million roster bonus that was due on the 3rd day of the league year. And in 2 seasons with the Rams, Cooks was not bad, caught over 100 passes for a little under 1,800 yards and 7 touchdowns, though he missed a lot of time this past season. I mean, not a lot of time, but he missed games this past season due to concussions and stuff, so his numbers weren't that great this past year. But he was a big part of the reason why they got the Super Bowl Cooks caught 80 passes for over 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns for that team that ended up making it to the Super Bowl. So it was helpful, but I guess it's kind of what happens when you go all in and things don't work out. Because as I've discussed, and again other people have discussed, they released Todd Gurley, who was making a lot of money. Now they traded Brandin Cooks, who's making a lot of money. And this is what happens. You try to accumulate all these young players. It sounds good in theory, but then when you have to pay all of them and you don't win a Super Bowl, then it looks funny. And like they like to say, the NFL stands for not for long, so that means that can mean a multitude of things, but usually it refers to like players being in the league. They're not really in the league for long, but also a lot of teams aren't that good for very long. So you need to be able to capitalize on your opportunities when you get them. And the Rams tried. They thought they had something in place that they would be able to sustain for a while, but unfortunately they did not have that. And now they're in a scenario where they are having to shed pieces instead of holding on to pieces, which is obviously not a part of what their master plan was. As a couple years ago, they started putting this whole thing in motion. And on top of that, they still had to pay Jalen Ramsey at some point because he's on his 5th-year option, I believe. And he made a point of wanting to be paid, which is part of the reason why he got shipped out of Jacksonville. So that's coming up. There's still, I believe, Jared Goff is the highest cap hit of any quarterback this year at $36 million. They're paying a lot of dead cap to Cooks and Gurley. So, yeah, it's kind of all a mess. Actually, I think Walter Sharp of Sharp Football, he has the official numbers. So, yeah, this is what he said. This is from his Twitter account. The Rams are spending $74 million so that they can have Jared Goff and not have Todd Gurley and Brandin Cooks on their roster. They are eating $38 million in dead cap, which may actually be a little bit higher because he had the Cooks dead cap at 17.8 as opposed to the 21.8. That was in the ESPN article. So like I said, it's so they're actually spending more money. So take that back. So at 21, so it's over 21.8, 20, it's 41.8. So like $42 million basically. They're eating a dead cap between Gurley and Cooks. And like I said, they're already spending a lot of money on Goff. The Rams will, his follow-up tweet is a nice little thread, which shout out to Twitter for this. This is a great feature that I'm happy they added. And not to like go too far from tangent, but as an average Twitter user, it's very helpful, especially when you're live tweeting shows like I was as I watched Breaking Bad for the first time. I just finished it today. So it's nice to, keep your thoughts together. But yeah, the Rams will attempt to compete in 2020 while spending approximately $45, which could be more, million dollars of $98 million cap, on players no longer on their team. That's about a quarter of the cap space spent on Rams the players that aren't on the Rams currently. And in spring of 2018, the Rams signed Todd Gurley and Brandin Cooks to mega deals with combined $94 million guaranteed. Those two players combined for 26 touchdowns, about half the team's total, and over 3,000 yards, almost 40% of the team's total. And the 2018 Rams made the Super Bowl. In spring of 2020, they dumped both the players and ate about $40 million dead cap. So yeah, again, it shows just how little time at the top most teams have. Very few teams are the Patriots, though I guess the Chiefs will try to see if they can become something like that. When you have one of if not the best quarterback in the league to have that level of sustained success. But even with that, as we've seen with the Saints, seen with the Packers, even seen with the Seahawks to a degree, they haven't got back to the Super Bowl since they didn't run the ball and threw an interception on the 1-yard line against the Patriots. They haven't been back. The Aaron Rodgers hasn't been back since one Super Bowl he won. Drew Brees hasn't been back since the Super Bowl he won. So, like I said, the windows are very small in the NFL, and unfortunately for the Rams, they were not able to capitalize on it. And then when you don't capitalize on it, you have a bunch of high-priced things. Now you got to find a way to get rid of them or offload them or something just so you can be able to afford other things to help make the team better. So kind of where it's stuck at. But on the Texans side of things, I'm not exactly sure how this was. I don't know if this was the plan or if this was like a reaction to the Hopkins thing or whatever, but trading away, I think if you balance it out, hold on, I got to find the tweet that had basically all the stuff that the okay, this is from Adam Levitin, who's the co-founder of a website called Established to Run. He tweeted out that the Texans, 2 trades involving wide receivers this offseason, gave up DeAndre Hopkins, a second-round pick, and a fourth-round pick. Got back David Johnson, Brandin Cooks, a second-round pick, a fourth-rounder next year, and a fourth-rounder in 2 years. So if you cut out the main stuff, they basically got an earlier second-round pick and David Johnson. No, well, they got an earlier second-round pick, David Johnson and Brandin Cooks for DeAndre Hopkins. And Brandin Cook and David Johnson are both on expensive contracts. When, again, one of the main points, which I think is more so that Hopkins and Bill O'Brien were just never going to be able to get along again for whatever reason, and that's pretty much the reason why we traded, in my opinion, not the whole they couldn't afford to pay him thing. Because, again, you're paying David Johnson and Brandin Cooks a lot of money at them. Well, at least their contracts are worth a lot. I don't know how much, like who's paying, how much their former teams are paying and how much the Texans are paying. But if the money was the issue and then you go out and trade for guys on expensive contracts, doesn't seem to jive. Plus, I think they gave $18 million guaranteed to Randall Cobb, so the math's not mathing here. Plus, I believe they are one of the teams with the highest amount of cap space, at least this season, still left. So, again, it's not like they were tight on room. It's not like they were the Chiefs or somebody who, at one point, $177, like not $177,000, like literally $177. People argue about dates worth more money on Twitter than what the Chiefs had to spend in free agency. And they were able to, I think they were able to get Sammy Watkins back in some way, but again, they didn't have to do anything too drastic to their team. They were able to figure it out. I would imagine if you have the money, you figure out how to keep one of the best receivers in the league, but I'm not Bill O'Brien, so there's that. But yeah, so from the Texans side of things, it just seems odd because it's like, how do you get you trade away again top 2, top 3 at worst receiver in the league, only get back a second round pick and David Johnson, who's been declining or whatever, and plus like an extra pick. Then you trade a second round pick for Brandin Cooks, who is unequivocally worse. Not like a bad receiver at all. It's like definitely worse than DeAndre Hopkins. Like there's no way the values are equal there. So it's just confusing. Because like, all right, if you knew you needed a receiver, then why not just keep DeAndre Hopkins? Plus, not to mention that this draft is like kind of loaded at receiver, supposedly. Obviously, whenever it's hard to say that for certain, but it's loaded at receiver. That's the thing. I saw a Twitter report that people think they can get a starting caliber receiver in like the 4th, 5th round. Like that's how good this draft is. And you had 2 second-round picks. So, in theory, especially since one's early, you could use those picks to move up if there was a receiver that felt like you really liked. Now you don't have that nearly as much wiggle room, and now you're kind of stuck at 40, and then you don't pick again for a little while, I believe. So, it's just the plan here. Again, you don't have to explain it to me. I'm not the owner. But just from the outside looking in, the plan seems very confused. Like, it seems like there is no true plan. Like, they're doing things, but, like, there's no, like, continuity to them. Like, again, if you thought you needed a receiver, then you just keep DeAndre Hopkins. That seems simple to me. Unless, again, the coach just hates him. Which, if that's the case, then forget everything I just said. Then he was always going to get traded, especially since the coach is the GM. Which, that's a different story for a different day. But outside of you just being petty, like, there seems to be no logical reason to trade away DeAndre Hopkins if you were then going to trade for a receiver that's getting paid just as much, if not more, than he is. That seems, again, kind of backwards. And is only like a year younger. And isn't as good. Faster, definitely faster, so I give them that. They're going to try to attract a team that gets hurt a lot. Because, I mean, even outside of the money and the fact that this is 4th team and 6 seasons or 7 seasons, how many ever seasons it is, he's also had a history of concussions. Like I mentioned, I think he's had 5 known concussions in his career, which is a lot. And he's probably like 1, max 2 more away from like probably having to call it a career if he cares about his long-term health. Or just, I mean, or if anybody in his family cares about his long-term health, they'll advise him like, hey, nah, you're good. Don't do this anymore. And they already have Will Fuller, who's another fast guy, but has had issues with hamstrings and ACLs and different things. So he's not exactly that reliable. Randall Cobb was good last year for the Cowboys, but he was banged up his last year in Green Bay, so you don't know whether that was an aberration or if that's like who he is now. And then also, what else? Then you have Kenny Stills, so he was a solid-ish receiver, but nothing like too special. So yeah, it's just like you once had one of the best receivers, now you have like a decent to solid group if everybody's healthy, which is again far drop off. And then you're gonna have to pay, and well, maybe that's why I saved the money, because you don't have to pay Deshaun, because once Mahomes' contract extension gets signed, then you have the numbers, and obviously Deshaun can't get that much, but like you're gonna have to pay him a lot more, because Mahomes probably gonna get like close to $200 million unless he's just like a really team-oriented guy and is willing to take less, which I mean he might, but taking less could still end up being $35-36 million, because again he's worth whatever. Blank check for him. Couldn't have open 2 seasons to a career much better than what he's had. So yeah, this is weird on both sides of it. Honestly, the Texans, like I said, probably need a receiver to replace Hopkins, but again, if you're going to do that, just keep Hopkins. And then from the Rams side of things, they kind of need to get rid of him because he didn't really seem to want to be there anymore. Plus, they need to shed the money. But now they're shedding money, and they can't afford to bring guys in to replace the guys they're letting go. Like, I don't know what they're going to do at running back now. I don't know what they're going to do at receiver. I mean, they could draft a receiver, but it's like now you got to hit on all the draft picks because you can't really go out and sign guys or trade for guys. Well, I mean, maybe you could. I don't know. But I don't know who's out there to be traded for that you can afford. I don't know. Like I said, this trade's weird on both sides, but again, appreciate the content. So I'm not going to complain on that. And speaking of people giving us content, the UFC continues to pump out news. Before it was about cards and fight islands and stuff, and now it's for something completely different, which, I mean, anyone who's been paying attention to sports, what it are, probably saw coming, but the UFC was late to respond, and now they're right where everybody else will be very soon, on their couch. So we'll talk about that and what happened, and how it went down, and what's next for the UFC for after this break. So stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
UFC. We were just talking literally last episode about how they're still holding all the events through the pandemic, Dana White had got a location in the United States secured. He hadn't even said where the location was yet, but apparently those details are going to come out soon. They're going to have UFC 249. I think it was supposed to be April 18th. He got a fight island. Apparently that like the infrastructure is just being built, so I mean it might take a little bit of time, but it's supposed to be ready. And they're going to fight there so they can continue to fight through the pandemic. All that fun stuff, all that great stuff. Look like, alright, maybe them and wrestling, like WWE, be the only two forms of sport entertainment going on through this pandemic. And then, nope, that's not happening because UFC 249 apparently won't go down. UFC 249 will not proceed on April 18th, despite UFC President Dana White's efforts to move forward with the pay-per-view event. All other UFC events have also been postponed indefinitely due to the coronavirus pandemic. Today, with a call from the highest level you can go at Disney and the highest level at ESPN and the powers that be there asked me to stand down and not do this event next Saturday, White told ESPN's Brett Okamoto on Thursday. UFC 249 was scheduled to air on ESPN+. ESPN has a 5-year contract as the exclusive home of UFC fights on its network and pay-per-view services. White said ESPN told him it didn't want him to do the fight, but he called the partnership strong and said he'll look forward to putting his next fight on the network. I can go next week, White said, so whenever my partner gives me the thumbs up that they're ready to go, I'm ready to go. In a statement, ESPN said it has been in constant contact with the UFC regarding UFC 249. Nobody wants to see sports return more than we do. Obviously, I mean, it's ESPN. It's literally what they do. But we feel like this was the right time we didn't feel like this was the right time, I should say, for a variety of reasons. ESPN expressed its concerns to the UFC, and they understood. On Monday, like I said, White told ESPN about securing a fight island and holding weekly fights, at least for the next 2 months. He told ESPN on Thursday that he was ready to go at some sort of resort in California, in Lemoore, near Fresno, in California. The California State Athletic Commission had canceled all combat sporting events through May 31st, but the Tachi Palace Casino Resort is situated on tribal lands. The ban did not apply. The casino also, but since it was located on tribal lands, the ban did not apply. The casino also did not have to file an executive stay-at-home order by the state. That seems unsafe, but okay. It's been a battle since day one, White said on the card. We've been fighting nonstop all day and night since the pandemic started to put on the April 18th event. The Palace of California, the Indian Reservation, has had our back this whole time, has stood their ground and was willing to do this fight. And let me tell you this, when the world gets back to normal California, that fight will be at the Tachi Palace. The pay-per-view event was to be headlined by Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, a likely heavyweight title eliminator between Francis Ngannou and another name I don't know how to pronounce exactly, but the last name is Rosenstruck. Also was on the 12 fights. That seems really unsafe. But okay. The co-main event, the women's fight, had already been called off because Rose Namajunas withdrew due to 2 coronavirus-related deaths in her family, according to her agent. So, I mean, it was really only a matter of time, as with all sporting events, until it was going to get canceled, in my personal opinion, because once you have fighters pulling out and being personally affected, because one thing to, like, say, like, oh, it's really not that serious, oh, it's just the flu, blah, 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 whatever, it's based on these 5G towers that China is building, or whatever reasoning you have for believing that it's not that serious. Until someone that you know, or someone that you know of, personally gets it, or knows someone that person gets it, and may or may not lose that person to the virus, will most people actually believe it, and even some people who did have it and recovered from it still don't believe it because they were able to recover, but that's a different story. But yeah, once it starts hitting home for different people in different ways, whether you believed it from the beginning, whether you were late person to get on it, or whether you didn't get on until you were personally affected by it, it was going to happen to everyone, and then once that starts happening, people start withdrawing from the card. Now you got to fill in matches last minute and stuff. I mean, they were going to put on an event, but like, was it going to be a good event? And I mean, in fairness, do people really care about that? Maybe, maybe not, because I mean, they just want to be able to watch any sort of sports. But from the UFC's perspective, you don't want to diminish your product. I would think. I don't know. Exactly, because I don't watch a whole lot of I don't watch like whole fights of UFC. I'll watch like the big fights, like the main events, if they're big. Like I watched the last Conor McGregor fight. Like I've watched a couple of his fights. Seen some John Bones Jones. I think I saw one. I believe it was Anderson that just snapped his leg on the guy's like femur. That was disgusting. That's probably the reason why I don't watch UFC, because it's like. This is boxing, like it's just like you're just hitting people in the face, like you kind of know what to expect. With UFC, you really have no idea what's going to happen, and that goes for the fighters and for the viewer. Like, and because of that, I mean, obviously everybody wants to see knockouts in these kind of sports, but I'm not trying to see guys break their leg or get their. Or I watched a lot of Ronda Rousey too, just because it was impressive to see her do that. But I think I was watching. I forget, it's one of the Miesha Tate's fights. This is before it was on UFC. This is a little bit of a tangent, but. It was one of them. I think she like literally like either almost or did like pop her elbow out. It was disgusting to watch, because again, people were like super tough and they're like, I'm not going to tap out. And I'm just like, please just tap out for the sake of your arm. I don't want to watch this. But they don't care about me and my needs, so they're just like, nah, I'm strong. I'll just hold it. And then boom, now she's popping her whole elbow out of the socket, and it's like disgusting. I remember hearing her describe it like at the peak of her powers. Hearing her describe like what it's like, and I was like, oh god, I couldn't imagine. But hey, that's what people do. So yeah, just like things like that are why I can't do UFC. At least with boxing, again, relatively speaking, the most somebody will just get like knocked out, and like that's I don't say entertaining because you don't want anybody to like get severely hurt in the ring, but like it can be entertaining. I mean, when Manny Pacquiao getting knocked out is one of like the most meme things in the history of sports. Obviously, like new age sports, because memes weren't alive or weren't around for forever. But of new age sports, it's like one of the most meme worthy things. That and like the drawing, crying meme, and like a couple other things are up there for the biggest meme worthy moments in sports. So I'm saying knockouts can be entertaining to a degree. But back to UFC. Yeah, I don't know why Dana White ever thought this was going to work 100%, because ESPN. I mean, granted, not like I'm assuming they're not having fans or whatever, so it's not like they get sued from them. But you don't want to get sued from like a fighter or like an agent or somebody's standpoint. If you have this event and then someone contracts the coronavirus at the event, that'll be a whole legal battle that I don't think ESPN was willing to get into at the moment. So, I mean. I'm assuming that's part of the reason why. That, and I mean, everything shut down, plus they're in California, which I know they're on an Indian reservation, or a Native American reservation. I think I said Indian, but I don't know what the technical, like the correct term is officially, but I know it can be either or, depending. So they're on that, so I guess they have their own rules, which is interesting, because like they're still in the state of California. I understand like maybe they're not governed by them or whatever the logic is, but it still seems like they should adhere to it, because, I mean, if they feel like it's not safe for the normal people, I don't know that Native Americans are any less susceptible to getting this disease, so that's an interesting factoid to have. But, yeah, it was just like, it just, I didn't see how it was going to go down when everything else was getting canceled, again, outside of WWE. Why would this fight be going on? It didn't make any sense, personally. I was hoping it worked, and maybe it still will work. Maybe it's just like this one card will get canceled. Maybe they'll have something next week or in a couple weeks or in the month of May or something. Or maybe they'll do something on like the Fight Island that you talked about once it's like anything's been constructed or what have you. But for the time being, at least there's no fight, and that probably for the time being is the right move. It just seems like it's not really worth the risk at this moment of all the bad things that could happen. In terms of the little bit of good that, like, hey, hopefully you put this card on and nothing goes wrong. But if something does go wrong, then it's a disaster, PR-wise, and then also personally, again, because now people are dealing with the virus, so you don't want to deal with that. And plus, like I said, there was already people pulling out because of connections to the virus personally. And the more people that pull out, the harder it is to find matches, let alone quality matches, especially on a card where they seem like they were going to try to go with 12 fights, which I don't know if that's a normal UFC card, but it seems like a lot of fights. So yeah, maybe that's the reason why ESPN was just like, yeah, no, this isn't safe. Though, I mean, they probably would have got the viewers because not really much to watch, especially on a Saturday. And you're not even go anywhere because everything's closed. So people are just stuck in the house. So they might have gotten extra viewership from that regard, but I understand why the ESPN came to this decision because, like I said, it just didn't seem worth the risk to have the event still go down the way it was supposed to go down. And, I mean, UFC is no different than any other sport. Every other sport's getting canceled, so might as well just let them chill out for a little while. Hopefully this month is not as bad as everyone expects it to be, and then we can go back or get closer to normal. I don't know about closer to normal, maybe not in May, but like in June, and then like you can at least hold fights without fans. Like, you can at least have them. And then, alright, then that's a step in the right direction to us getting sports back. We shall see. But yeah, I was not at all surprised to hear that this UFC event got canceled, though. Unfortunate for Dana White, unfortunate for the fighters that were ready and able to compete. But again, not at all surprised by this outcome. So we'll see if they can get things ramped back up again shortly. But who knows at this point? No one really has any idea or timetable for any of this stuff, so it's really hard to say. But again, hopefully we'll have something to watch soon. From the UFC standpoint, I know obviously no one's gonna, Dana White and ESPN or whoever doesn't want to lose all that money, so they're gonna try something. And just whether or not it goes off, whether or not it works, is a different story. But if and when they do, I'll be here to talk about it. And speaking of events and stuff, there was a recent poll that came out about Americans and how they feel, or how they would feel going back to a sporting event now, obviously knowing what they know, if there was no vaccine. So I'll talk about the results from that poll, and also how I feel. And on top of that, whether I think the poll results make a lot of sense. Or maybe they don't make any sense. You have to stay around and find out my opinions on that. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, as we know, the sports world is on hold, but when it will start up eventually, whether that's this year, whether that's the summer, whether that's in next month, whether that's in 5 months from now, whether that's in 2021, no one really knows, but eventually it will start back up, and most likely it will start back up without fans, just in terms of safety precautions. But there was a poll it was a poll done by a school in New Jersey, shout out Seton Hall, that this is a small sample size, but it was an interesting peek into where we as Americans, where like our headspace is and where our minds are at currently as we go through this pandemic. So, the sports world, like I said, been on a standstill. Apparently there was a poll done that some 72% of Americans said they would not attend if sporting events resumed without a vaccine for the coronavirus. The poll, which had a fairly small 762 respondents, so obviously the sample size is not that big, was released Thursday by Seton Hall's University Stillman School of Business. When polling respondents who identified as sports fans, 61% said they would not go to a game without a vaccine. The margin of error is plus or minus 3.6. Only 12% of all respondents said they would go to games if social distancing could be maintained, which would likely lead to a highly reduced number of fans, staff, and media for games. For example, the fan capacity for state percent is around 1,900. And then if you have to do the 6 feet, I don't know, I mean, necessarily, it was probably like 2 seats in between each person. So then, yeah, that just cuts into the number significantly, so that's obviously a big difference. The poll shows that the coronavirus pandemic would affect sports for the foreseeable future, even if some resume. Just 13% of Americans said they would feel comfortable attending games again the way that they had in the past. This virus has the attention and respect of the nation, said Rick Gentile, director of the Seton Hall Sports Poll. Those who identify as sports fans at all levels of interest line up closely with the general population in regard to their own safety and that of the players. According to medical experts, there may not be a vaccine for the coronavirus until 2021, which obviously is an important detail to note. Compromise could be found in having games with no fans, an idea that garnered sufficient support. More than 3/4, 76% said they would watch broadcasts of games without fans and do so with the same amount of interest they had before. Obviously, I mean, not that many people go to games regularly anyway, so most of us spend time watching it at home, so I obviously don't see how. I mean, again, as I discussed, I think, a little while back when this first kind of came out, sporting games with no fans would sound weird. Honestly, I don't know how that would affect the players, but like for me, viewing at home, I mean, I'm just there to watch a game. It doesn't really matter. So I'm not surprised at that result, at least. Only 16% said they would be less interested, but 7% said they would be more interested. That's weird. But I guess those are probably people that are season ticket holders or whatever that go to games normally. Though there has been discussion of games without spectators. Nearly half of respondents, 46%, said they think sports will be canceled through the end of 2020. So, there's a lot to discuss there within these polling results. Again, sample size, very small. Less than 1,000. So, it's not the entire country. But it's just a good glimpse into where people's minds are at, though. Again, I don't know how they polled the people, and I'm Seton Hall's in New Jersey. I know New Jersey's been one of, because of the fact of its close proximity to New York, and the fact that New York has so many cases. New Jersey, I think, is the second most cases in the country. Nowhere near New York, but like, I think if it's not second, it's definitely high up there. So again, people in New Jersey, those are the only people that they have responded to survey, which I don't know, and I don't know if we will know where the respondents are from, because that may or may not factor into their opinion on it, because if you're in a state that's been more aggressive against it, that may or may not sway your opinion on this. But there's a lot of interesting stuff to unpack here. So that last note was interesting, where it said almost half of sports fans believe nothing will happen in 2020 in terms of sports. Now, am I on that side? Not necessarily, mainly just because I really want football to be played. Do I think anything else will be played? Probably not, but I really just want the NFL to be back. I mean, I'll take just the NFL. I'll say I'd want college football too, but I will take just the NFL. I will find a way to manage. But obviously there's nowhere to know. And that's just me being more so hopeful than it is anything based on anything I've heard or read or seen or listened to, or my own medical knowledge, which I have none. So obviously I don't know how this pandemic's going to work, but more so than anything, this is more just being hopeful and me not wanting to miss out on my favorite sport, which is football, and anything. But that's interesting that almost half of the people in this poll think sports will be canceled, because that's a big gap. I think the last NBA game was March 11th-ish, so it's been around a month. Or maybe it might have been a little earlier than March 11th, but I know sometime early March that the last game was played in the NBA, and then obviously subsequently a bunch of other things were canceled. So if we're talking about going over a full 9 months, if not more, with no sports, That's a long time. Again, not completely out of the realm of possibility. I would not be shocked if that happened, but I'm saying that's a long time for sports fans to go with nothing in between. I would be shocked if nothing happened in between. Like, I think somebody's going to try to figure something out. Whether or not it's safe is a different story, but the rest of the year, that was interesting to feel like people believe that. Again, not that I think they're wrong, because I do. There's a very good possibility in my mind that could happen. But it would just be interesting if there was no sports for the next. We're in April, so the next 8 months, just nothing. It'd be interesting. But also, I guess going back to the top of the poll, where 72% said they would not attend sporting events if they resumed without a vaccine. That's also interesting because that kind of plays into how these leagues are going to try to operate once they get the sports running back up. Because I mean, not everybody. I mean, teams make money from their revenue deals and stuff like that for broadcast the games, but also they make money from like ticket sales. They make money from merchandise, memorabilia, food, beer, drinks at the game, stuff like that, fan experiences, what have you. Without that, NFL, not even, I was going to say NFL, but just sports teams in general would be losing out on a good amount of their money. Because again, they can't get everything just from their TV deals. They get money from other ways as well. And if one of those ways is cut off to where there's no fans, is it worth it? It's an interesting thing we'd have to look at, because obviously I don't think it'll be safe for fans to be at the games. Not until, I kind of agree with that, not until there's a vaccine. But it just seems like even if sports open back up and they said, all right, you guys can go to the game with a social distance, it doesn't sound like that many people would want to go anyway because they don't want to risk it. So what I'm saying is, does it even make sense to open it up at all to fans? Like, give them even the option. If it just doesn't sound like they're going to be that interested in going. Like, if they have it with no fans, they have it with no fans. That's one thing. But if you have it with fans, in theory, and not that many fans show up, it's like, what's the point? So I guess that's an interesting thing to look into, is like, if anything starts back up, and they're going to start it up with no fans. Cool. But after like a month, do they then allow fans to come back in before there's a vaccine? I don't know. That'd be interesting to see what that timetable would look like. If there's a vaccine, will we then allow fans to come to the game, or will we force them to social distance, or whatever way you have to do it? And then, like I said, with the social distancing thing, that severely cuts down on the amount of fans you can have at the stadium. And again, that money's better than no money from no fans, but it's not going to be what the teams and franchises and stuff are used to getting from like their at arena take home, whatever their cash flow is from like selling tickets and all the things I mentioned earlier. It's not going to be the same, so they're going to be taking a hit there. I mean, they're already going to be taking a hit, or they already have been taking a hit. Every league, I guess, outside the NFL, because that hasn't started up yet. But everyone else is already taking a hit, so it's not like that would be anything new. But at least then you're at least getting some of the TV money because you're broadcasting the games. But yeah, that was interesting. Just the fact that almost 3/4 of Americans wouldn't even go to a game unless there's a vaccine. Okay, well, no, I don't want to go that far. 3/4 of people in this survey, because this survey does not predict out all Americans. Obviously, there's over 300 million Americans. This survey didn't even interview 1,000 people. It's not. You wouldn't even notice that on the radar. So, but it was just like I said, the answers were interesting just to see at least a little bit where people's heads are at currently. But also, when you just ask, but then when you drop it down to sports fans, so that was just any regular American. When you drop it down to sports fans, now the number goes up or down, depending on how you look at it, to 61%. So that means sports fans would be more willing to attend games. Again, if they're an avid sports fan, you want to be able to take in that experience. So then maybe you're more willing to risk that. So that's an interesting thing. Or maybe just everything I just said, maybe not even matter, because people will be so invested to just be able to have sports to watch again that they'll risk whatever it is. Oh, well, the corona, not whatever it is, the COVID-19, contracting it in order to go watch a game, which I would not recommend if and when this happens. But I'm interested to see if people would actually be willing to do that. But that's the funny part. So it's 39% said they would go if there's no vaccine, but then only 12% of the respondents. Again, this is sports fans. Wow, like I said, 28% of the people polled that aren't necessarily sports fans said they would go. They would attend sporting events without a vaccine, but then only 12% of respondents said they would go to games where social distancing could be maintained, which is odd to me. So you would go. So more people sound like maybe I'm interpreting these numbers wrong, which I don't think I am, but maybe I am. So you're telling me people would be more likely to go if there were no restrictions, with no vaccines, there are no restrictions on sporting events, than if there were restrictions, so that it's safer for everybody to be there, unless people get the disease. Doesn't that seem kind of backwards? Like maybe it's just me, and like I said, there's a chance I'm interpreting these wrong. But with that, and then only 13% of the Americans surveyed said that they would feel comfortable the same way they had been in the past, which I think is that's honestly one of the biggest takeaways from this as a whole. Just things are going to be different. For better or worse, things are going to be different whenever we're allowed to roam around more freely. People are going to be more cautious. Well, and maybe they'll be more cautious. Maybe they'll be more reckless. We really don't know. And in theory, people will be more cautious and stuff like that. But in that same vein, the fact that only 12% of respondents said that they would go to games where social distancing could be maintained is odd, because you would think if you're going to be able to go to a game, why would you not want social distancing to be a part of that? Because you want to stay safe. That seems logical to me. And I find that funny that people, at least from this survey, again, not all Americans, from this survey, don't feel that way. They're just like, if we got a social distance, I'm not going to go. But if we don't have to social distance, then yeah, sure, it's fine. Because again, so 72% of Americans polled said they would not attend sporting events if they resumed without a vaccine. But then only 12% of respondents said they would go to games if social distancing could be maintained. So that means in the original thing, 28 or, I don't know, there's 28% of respondents left out there. So in theory, 20% of Americans polled said that they would attend sporting events if they resumed without a vaccine. And that number drops by over 10%, or drops 16% for if you got to maintain social distancing. Now, that's where you draw the line. Again, assuming I'm interpreting these numbers right, which I think I am, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or on social media or wherever. That seems kind of backwards. Like you should be social distancing. Like you should be having the 6 feet apart. If there's no vaccine, yeah. If there's a vaccine, all right, yeah, do whatever. But then even with that, you don't know who didn't vaccine, and then that's a completely separate story with the anti-vaxxer stuff. But why would you not have social distancing, especially right now? If there's no vaccine, you kind of have to, right? Like there's no way they're going to let you play sports without social distancing. With fans, at least. There's no way that they're going to do that without social distancing. So I think it's just something we're going to have to get used to. That's kind of the extension of the point I made earlier, that there are certain things that we may have to become accustomed to that we weren't accustomed to before, whether the ways that we live, the ways that we work, the ways that we interact with people, all that stuff is going to change to a degree, I think. Again, I'm not some all-knowing being, but I think things will change for better or for worse, and we're going to come out of this a little bit differently. And we'll see whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, it's interesting to see where Americans' heads are at, to a degree, through this whole pandemic. Because obviously this is a weird time, a stressful time for everyone involved. Well, not everyone involved, just everyone. Because I haven't been personally... No, take that back. One friend tested positive. He's fine. But I know one person that's tested positive. Other than that, I haven't really been that affected. And apparently his symptoms aren't that bad, so he should be fine. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I haven't been like that affected. But even still, I'm still taking this as seriously as one could or should take it. As should you. So, speaking of taking pandemics seriously, there was a event that did take it seriously and could potentially, if this is true, could potentially be reaping the rewards of taking pandemics seriously. Due to the fact that they've been covered for over 15 years now for something like this in case it happened. And now they're getting a payout from it. So we'll talk about that, maybe a couple other things. in the next segment. But yeah, we're going to talk about that first and just talk about what it is and why more leagues didn't do this, or if more leagues should do this or will do this in the future. But yeah, so we'll talk about all that stuff right after a break. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, that team that event that I was referring to was none other than Wimbledon. Apparently, the tournament's risk and finance subcommittee has insisted on a pandemic clause for nearly 20 years ago, and now, due to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, they're reaping the rewards of it. So, Wimbledon, a week after Wimbledon, organizers canceled the tournament due to the coronavirus pandemic. More details have emerged about how an infectious disease clause in its insurance policy will help offset an estimated revenue loss of around £250 million. Don't know what the cash equivalent to that is, but I believe is a little bit higher, based on numbers we will hear right now. Wimbledon was set to receive around £114 million, which is about $141 million. I'm assuming that's closer to $300 million from the policy, according to the Action Network, a figure aligned with the Times reporting last week, which estimated the payout to be in excess of £100 million. There's also, Ravel also tweeted this out too, if you want to double check it, with like a different reference. We were fortunate to have the insurance, and it helps, said Richard Lewis, Wimbledon's outgoing chief executive, in an interview with The Guardian. The insurers, the brokers, and everybody involved have been excellent to work with so far, but there's still a lot of work to do. The All England Club reportedly updated its Wimbledon insurance policy years ago to include the infectious disease clause following the worldwide SARS outbreak in 2002. The club's Risk and Finance Committee is subcharged with assessing all potential risks to the annual tournament, including global pandemics, terrorist attacks, and even the death of a monarch, which would thrust the country into a time of national mourning. The recently canceled 2020 British Open is also covered by pandemic insurance from Golf Digest. Part of the reason the championship is being canceled rather than postponed, like the Masters, where the thing's supposed to go down in November, assuming we're back outside by then, and the PGA Championship, has to do with insurance, as sources say. Similar to Wimbledon, the RNA, which is risk and I don't know what the A stands for, but the R is for risk, because that one said Risk and Finance Subcommittee. Don't know what RNA is, but that's irrelevant. The RNA has a policy that shields against a global pandemic, and a source indicated the Open would have to cancel by a certain date in order to collect on its insurance premium. Other options were considered for scaled-down versions of both tournaments, but were ultimately dismissed due to the number of personal requirement to pull it off, even without spectators. So this is interesting, because one, didn't know it was possible. did not know there was pandemic insurance out there to be used by, whether it's sports leagues or sporting events or what have you, though. I mean, there's insurance for just about everything, so I shouldn't be that surprised, but that's interesting. But more interesting than that is the fact that they actually were utilizing it and have been utilizing it, if this is true, for over almost 20 years now. I mean, I guess it just depends on how much you believe in the science. If you're a person that believes in the science, or in science, whether that's for a multitude of things, but if you're a person that believes in that, then people have been saying that there was a pandemic level event, and whether that's this or it's something bigger that's to come, is going to happen at some point and probably wipe out a good portion of the population on this planet. Now, I don't think it's this one. I think this is a more smaller scale one, though obviously millions of people getting affected is not that small scale, but in the total population of the world it is. So there's that. But the fact that some countries are less prepared than Wimbledon is, which is just a tournament, speaks to the importance of having people in power that believe in science. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and try to convince you if you're a non-believer. But my saying is that you need to have people at the top that understand everything as well as they can. If you have people that are just blocking things out on whether it's no matter what side of it it is. If you're a person that only believes in science and doesn't believe in anything, I mean, science at least has facts to back it up. So there's that. But if you're just like a religious person, or if you're just like a person that believes all this stuff is like a hoax or whatever, like, you need to at least have people on your team that will give you that information so that you can be as prepared as possible. Because to hear this, and the fact that and I guess maybe this is just a British thing, that people over there were more on top, because like I said, since the Masters and the PGA Championship were postponed in golf, those are both, I'm pretty sure, I know the Masters held in America, but I'm pretty sure the PGA Championship's held in America too. So I doubt America, though, I mean, there are scientists that were saying that something like this would be coming. I'm looking it up now. There's been movies about it. I think there's a series on Netflix about a global pandemic kind of taking us all out and why we should be prepared for it. But yeah, if you don't have people that pay attention to that stuff or believe in that stuff, then you won't be prepared for when these things happen. And now, because of this preparedness, even though they're still going to lose money, they're not going to lose nearly as much because they have some insurance to help offset some of the loss, which is big. And that's why, that's honestly why, isn't that why everybody has any type of insurance, whether it's car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, or whatever? You hope you don't have to use it, but if you do need to use it, then you're prepared. Or, again, that's assuming you have it through your job or whatever means you can, that's more so health insurance, but you have through your job or wherever, that makes it more easy and convenient for you to have it. But again, you have insurance in case something happens. That's literally what it means. So now something happened, and this is the only, like I said, this Wimbledon thing was the first I'd ever heard about anybody having pandemic insurance in all the sports. There's been sports canceled and basically around the world. And Wimbledon was the first one I've heard of that had pandemic insurance. And that thought is kind of wild to me. Now, granted, did I know it existed? No, not at all. I was fairly young when the SARS thing came out. That bird flu thing basically didn't shut down much. The swine flu didn't really shut down much, though apparently one of my sister's friends had it, but she gets sick a lot, so maybe not be the best person to gauge this on. But yeah, nothing had shut anything down like this. Granted, if you look this up, which many people have, since we have an abundance of free time now, you look this up, it seems like one of these comes every 100 years, and this was around the time. So because of that, you would have thought if you have people on your team that know these kind of things, you can be more prepared. But for whatever reason, it seems like people, and again, maybe it's just a British thing. I don't want to knock American sports leagues for not having it if it is not, in fact, a real thing. But apparently, scientists or different people within the government knew about this since like November. So it's important to have people in place that will listen to those people. because that's why you have them, is in case something happens, or like if something happens over here, you're like, all right, it could end up happening over here. What do we do when it gets over here, or how do we be prepared for when it gets over here, so that we can make sure that it's not as bad as it could be. And that's what Wimbledon did to a degree. They were like, all right, there's this happened. What happens if it happens again, but it's worse? What are we going to do? Then they got this insurance, this pandemic insurance, and now, boom, they're in the clear. I mean, not in the clear because they're losing money, but they're, again, going to lose a lot less money than most other sports leagues or sporting events or tournaments or what have you are going to lose. And that's just because they were prepared. And that's why it's important to be prepared, so that you don't ever get caught off guard and then now you're scrambling. Better to, I don't know where this official code is from per se, but that's a quote. Many people say, you always want to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that's what this is. The Wimbledon, even though you could argue, like, why would you need pandemic insurance? It's only, I mean, it's $2 million, which isn't probably not that much for them in the grand scheme of things, but it's like, it's $2 million, like, it's pandemic insurance, it's not going to be a pandemic, who really cares? And now, bada bing, bada boom, we're in the middle of a pandemic, everything's being canceled. It's not like one of those diseases where life goes on, if you catch it, you catch it. Like, no, literally everything's shutting down. And now they're going to lose all this money, but now they're going to lose a lot less because they have this insurance. So yes, so stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And also, whoever that is on their, the Risk and Finance team, I believe is what this SB Nation article said. Yes, Risk and Finance Subcommittee. Whoever that was, if they still work with Wimbledon, should be immediately given a raise. Now, maybe they can't afford it because of the money, or the event being canceled. But if they could afford it, then that person should get a raise immediately, assuming he still works, or she, because we don't know who it is. He or she still works at Wimbledon, because they are clearly a genius. Again, does it take a genius to understand insurance? No. But it takes a pretty smart person to be able to convince people to do something they don't want to do. In theory. Now, maybe Wimbledon was always on board with this, but if they weren't, then they took some convincing. Then, hey, kudos to this person, whoever you are, for doing this, and then continuing to get them to pay for it, even after years and years and years of not ever needing it. 17 years, they've supposedly they paid for it, and nothing had happened until right now, and now they're better prepared for it than a lot of countries are. Which I don't know what that says about those countries, but kudos to Wimbledon. I'm not going to knock them for being prepared for a pandemic when literally we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I thought that I just wanted to touch on that. I thought that was kind of interesting, the fact that, one, that there was pandemic insurance out there to be had, and two, that somebody was taking advantage of it. Because, again, that's what would make this worse, is that if you find out, like, the NBA or, like, the Premier League or the Champions League or whatever was given the chance to get pandemic insurance and turned it down, and now they're complaining about losing money and cutting people's salaries and stuff like that just because they weren't prepared, then you start to look funny in the light. So hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully, but I mean, it should be, right? Because, like, if Wimbledon's doing it and the British Open does it, I don't know exactly which soccer or football league is in Europe. I think, yeah, I don't want to get it wrong because that'll make me look like a clown. But whichever one is, you would think that they would at least be aware of this, because if Britain has this, if Great Britain has this, then you would think other European countries probably would have the chance at it. No, that do you think it would just be a Britain thing? I don't think. I'd be shocked if pandemic insurance was just a Britain thing. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So that means other people probably had a chance to get it and turned it down. And now here, look at where we're at. So kudos to that person, kudos to Wimbledon. That was really cool. Whatever, the fact that they're going to get around $141 million paid out to them because they had insurance. In case something like this happened. Because you never know. You never know. And speaking of not knowing things, in terms of how, just in terms of the future or whatever, how things are going to go, there's a horse tournament going down, and I'm not really sure how that's going to work, nor do I know who's going to win, or nor do I know how the rules even work, so we're kind of getting in touch with that. I know we talked about this potentially going down, but now we have actual names of people. a time, a date, all that fun stuff. So when we talk about that, discuss it, talk about whether or not I will be watching, because I may be, I might not be. You'll see how, not see how I'm feeling, because again, not like I'm going anywhere, but maybe maybe I'll watch something else. But I imagine I'll tune in a little bit. Sports is sports. I'll watch almost anything sports related. So, so we'll discuss that, who's going to be a part of it, whether or not I think it's fair, certain people aren't going to be a part of it, all that fun stuff, and right after this break. So stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So ESPN will be televising a horse tournament, which is going to be single elimination shooting competition, beginning on Sunday, April 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The semifinals and championship of the NBA horse tournament will appear. Oh, wow, they're not doing it all in one time? Didn't know, that seems odd. Will air beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 16th, which I believe is a week from Thursday. Yes, a week from Thursday. So, breaking it up for whatever reason, I guess if it's television, you're going to have people talk or whatever. But the contestants will be as follows: Chris Paul, Trae Young, Zach LaVine. So those are the three, and Mike Conley. Don't know why he's not listed. But yeah, so we'll include those three, those four, I should say, of the NBA players. We'll also have WNBA stars, including Hall of Famer Tamika Catching and Allie Quigley of Chicago Sky, I believe, or is she on a different team now? Nope, she's still on the Chicago Sky. Glad I got that one right. That would have been awkward. But yeah, so Chicago Sky. And then NBA alumni, Chauncey Billups and Paul Pierce, which I mean makes sense. They work for ESPN. How it will work: all games will be filmed while competing at home locations on indoor or outdoor courts, and compete shot for shot in the traditional playground game. A coin toss will establish a shooting order for the players, with the more senior player calling heads or tails. Players must describe each shot attempt, specifying the type of shot they intend to make before a shot, such as a bank shot or a swish. Dunking is prohibited, which is what I was worried about, which is smart, because if it weren't, Zach LaVine would win. I wasn't sure if that was going to be the case or not. The first player in each game to accumulate the letters HORSE after failing to match 5 shots is eliminated. So, didn't know that dunking was going to be prohibited, so that makes it a little bit more enjoyable for me. I just thought Zach LaVine was going to just out-dunk everybody, and that'd be cheating. Well, then I guess no, because if you lay it up, then you could that'd be dumb. But yeah, so at least that evens the playing field for everyone else. So I guess once you have WNBA players in this, no offense to them, but most of them, like there's some like Candace Parker, Brittany Griner, a few others that can dunk. I would assume Liz Cambage can dunk. She's like 6'9". But yeah, so most of them can't dunk. I mean, there's a lot of NBA players that can't dunk as well, but most of them can't dunk, so then having anybody that can dunk would be unfair. So I guess once I didn't know they were going to add in WNBA players, so I was just going to be strictly NBA, but I mean, it makes sense to add them in as well. So yes, now that that's prohibited, it makes a whole lot of sense. Also, wait. So as we mentioned with the schedule, so on Sunday, April 12th, it will go from 7 to 9. Then the semifinals will be April 16th, like I said, at 9 Eastern, and the championship will be at 11 p.m. I understand that, generally speaking, people aren't going anywhere, but I mean, for the people that do still have to go to work, this is kind of late, is it not? Especially on the East? I figured you could fit the whole thing in 2 hours. Like it's only, it's 2 and then 1. It's 3 matches. They're doing 4 in 2 hours. Or not be able to fit 3. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's a re-air or something. It just seems kind of odd. We all games will be on ESPN, and the matchups are as follows: Trae Young versus Chauncey Billups, Doing Catchings versus Mike Conley, Zach LaVine and Paul Pierce, and then Chris Paul and Allie Quigley. So, this is an interesting one because, people that are in theory good shooters don't necessarily need to be good at this game because a lot of stuff involved is going to be like tricky shots or like you got to be specific. You have to bank it in or you have to swish and stuff like that like people try to do. But even NBA players can't guarantee how every shot is exactly going to go out of their hand because, again, no one's perfect or a robot. So sometimes things get messed up. But who would I put my money on if I were betting on this? Which I'm not a betting man. I guess, well, I don't know if having a buy-in for fantasy football counts as betting, because, like, in theory, you're betting on yourself to win and get your money back, which I haven't been doing all the time. Well, I won my league 2 years ago, not this past year. This past year was a disaster. Jared Goff and Brandin Cooks tried to sabotage one of my teams, and my other team was a complete and unmitigated disaster. I started Phil Rivers at least once during his 3 or 4 interception games. It was a mess. Yeah, and then DeAndre Hopkins had a slow first half. It was the first half of the season. It was all messed up. It's all bad. Not here to talk about my fantasy football woes from this past season, but yeah, just like with the horse, it's like it's not just like it'd be one thing, but just like a 3-point shooting competition where it's just like, all right, you take like 5 shots from here, shoot it, 5 shots from there, shoot it, like. That you just pick the best shooter, but when you're factoring in like trick shots and creativity and stuff like that, like there's probably a lot of stuff that, especially during this time now, they've had all the downtime. People will be at home just like practicing wild and outlandish shots, and I don't know who shoots those kind of wild and outlandish shots on the regular. So I think just the fact that you can shoot from far probably gives Trae Young the advantage because not everybody can consistently hit from 30 feet, 25, 30 feet out. Like, that's not a thing most people would even attempt to do. And within the structure of the game, of a NBA game, let alone in a playground game. So that part is interesting. Though, I don't want to say Trae Young because his shooting, I don't think his shooting percentage from 3 this year has been, like, that great. Let me check. His shooting percentage this season from 3 was all of 36%, which again, not bad, but it's not exactly Steph, because I believe, I think Stephen Curry had a much higher 3-point shooting percentage at this point in his career, and that's obviously who he gets compared to a lot. But in his second year, he shot 42% from 3, and as a rookie, shooting almost 5 attempts per game, he shot 43%. 43.7. So, again, not exactly on the same level as a shooter this early in his career. So, you don't just want to go him. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I feel like Chris Paul. Again, having to be short, you have to do weird things and get weird angles on your shots in order to get them to go off against taller guys. So I could believe it if Chris Paul could be good at this same, I guess, kind of with Conley. I know Zach LaVine, again, in my opinion, his advantage was going to be dunking, if you could do that, but you can't do that. Not that he's a bad shooter, but obviously that's where he would shine compared to everybody else. But I don't know, he feels like a competitive guy, so I don't think he's going to want to go out there and be sorry. None of them are going to want to go out there and be sorry. So that's the one thing. So everybody's going to try to play to win the same way with this 2K stuff, people are talking trash to each other just because no one likes to lose, and especially when it's on national TV, and people will be able to rewatch this and see your embarrassment if you get embarrassed. You don't want that. So yeah, that's interesting. What else? But yeah, no, I don't even think I picked the winner officially. I said like probably I could see Chris Paul. Well, then I don't know because like you think about the Chauncey Billups and the Paul Pierces, and I don't know when last time Tamika Catchings played. But it's, I mean, they got free time, and especially if they have, in order to do it, you got to have an indoor or outdoor court set up somewhere by your house. So you would think they'd be able to practice this, and then obviously with some of the older retired players, maybe they have kids or stuff, or nephews or nieces, where they could do things like this with them. Keeps you fresh. Though I know when I played AAU, you always shot like half court shots at the end of practice for fun. So I don't think NBA players don't do trick shots. And even still, I've seen like I know like Steph does like a tunnel shot. I know some people who shoot like half court shots at the end of their warm ups and stuff. So people shoot strange shots. So I don't imagine it's that abnormal. But I don't know. Now I'm kind of. I don't know. I feel like Chris Paul is going to take this way too seriously. So I can see him winning something like this just because he's going to try very hard to win. So I don't know. Maybe that'll be my pick. Not that this is really all that matters. Like I said, I'm not even 100% sure I'm going to be locked and loaded for it. Though if it's Sunday at 7, I don't think I'll be doing anything. Even though it is Easter, again, pandemic. So probably not going to be doing much. So I probably will watch just to see how it goes. And see, again, if anybody gets embarrassed or if there's any, or if just there's like a game going on and there's like one letter between them after like 10 shots. Like, you never know. Be interesting to find that out. But yeah, so that's going down. So that'll at least give us something to get our beaks wet on in terms of like sports related content. Because I mean, outside that's really just the 2K tournament. So you don't like 2K. Then you're kind of out on that. At least everybody that's played basketball has played a horse before in their lifetime, so that's not like that abnormal. Not everybody plays video games, which, I mean, you should. It's a nice way to use your mind off things. I need to get the show though. I haven't got the new show yet. MLB The Show. It's the baseball game for PS4. Shout out PlayStation Gang. But I haven't got MLB The Show yet. So I got to get that obviously because I mean, half the time can't just be playing Madden and 2K all the time. Give you something else to do. But yeah, so if you're not a video game person, you're not watching a 2K tournament. And even if you are a video game person like myself, watching other people play is not always enjoyable. You like to be the one playing or be the one involved or being the one like helping out or whatever. You don't necessarily just love. Though, I mean, there's YouTube channels that gain massive popularity, Chris Move being one of them. Not that he's alone, but just he was one of the first ones that just like filmed himself, or recorded himself playing 2K and put it up on YouTube and got millions of subscribers for it. So there's a market for it. I just don't know if all NBA fans are watching this, which I assume is what they were trying to get. But I don't know if all NBA fans are that interested in sports that they will watch NBA players play 2K. But hey, you never know. I mean, they're going to watch people play horse. So I mean, is there really that much different? Both of them are games. So it's not like it should be that far fetched, in my opinion. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Lock in Sunday, April 12th, 7 p.m. ESPN. You're most likely not going to be doing much else unless you're like working. Which, if you are, shout out to you. You're doing a lot, and I imagine it's very stressful. If you have to like go in the office, then maybe you have to work from home on something that's different. If you have to go into an office or not office per se, like a store or like a hospital or urgent care or whatever. Again, salute to you guys. You guys are doing everything you can to make sure that people like me and people like themselves and their families and friends are safe and healthy. So that you are appreciated. But yeah, horse tournament, see how it goes. Chris Paul is probably going to be my winner, which means I'll probably lose in the first round because that's just how my luck goes with these things. So sorry, Chris Paul, if you lose in the first round. It's my fault. But also, if you win, it's my fault too, because I picked you. So either way, I'm covered here. But yeah, so after the break, I didn't realize this originally earlier in the week, but it was brought to my attention. I think it was like Monday or Tuesday that this week would have or should have been when the national championship was played for the NCAA tournament. I think it would have been Monday, if my math checks out on the dates. So because there was no tournament, I guess that kind of just what caused my mind to go blank on just the fact that normally I know when it is March or when it's about to be April or whatever because of the tournament. Because it's like first weekend, second weekend, Final Four, all that stuff. But that didn't exist because of the pandemic. Thanks for that, coronavirus. But yeah, so because of that, I completely forgot. But since there's nothing new to talk about the NCAA tournament, I thought we would look back on the past decade. And I'm not going to go best because, again, that's subjective. I'm not going to go greatest because, again, that's subjective. Everyone's got a different list. I'm just going to go with some of my favorite moments over the past decade from the NCAA tournaments, whether that's games, players, performances, what have you. So yeah, we'll talk about that right after this break. So stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So yeah, obviously with 10 years of NCAA tournament, there's a lot of stuff to be included. I'm not gonna bog down everything because again, there's been a lot of game winners, a lot of interesting moments, interesting games, comebacks, upsets, what have you. It would be hard to get it down to like even a top 10, let alone a top 5. So I'm not just gonna kind of spitball it, freestyle it here. Obviously there's certain ones that are obvious to touch on, but just going back, it was recently as last year that I can remember watching this because at where I was working, we had just like I imagine where you're working or were working. If you're not there anymore, I'm not where I'm at in this story. But we had an office NCAA tournament pool. Cool. So then I knew my only chance last year to a path to victory was Purdue upsetting UVA. And Carson Edwards did everything he could to make it so I could be close to the money. But unfortunately, it did not happen because UVA wanted to somehow tap out a ball, track it down, dribble, pass it to their big guy with the blonde hair. It was like an African name, I believe. And somehow he hadn't shot the ball really the entire game. Didn't really shoot the ball much, if I remember correctly, after that when they went to overtime. But he catches the ball, barely puts it up as time expires. It goes in, because of course it went in. Well, everyone, just why could I be happy? It goes in, ties the game, and then they end up going to overtime. The UVA Purdue game again. Carson Edwards, shout out to him because he was basically out there playing by himself. If I remember correctly, he's basically out there by himself. Yeah, they lost in overtime in the Elite Eight, and obviously UVA went on to win the championship. But yeah, Carson Edwards had a whopping 42 points. Next highest person on the team was 7. Two guys had 7. Again, he was out there. I swear it felt like every time they're down, they just gave him the ball and just got out of the way. But yeah, no, Virginia was probably a better team. They had, like I said, DeAndre Hunter who hit the big 3 in the championship game to tie it. Kyle Guy, who was good. Ty Jerome, who was good. I think the guy's name was... I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but It was the M and his last name was with a D. So I was Diakite. That's how it's American would pronounce it. I don't think that's how you necessarily pronounce it, but I remember he had the blonde hair, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so he hit that. So that was that's kind of like one more recent ones. Obviously, the UCF Duke game was also kind of nuts. That was a big one at the time. Didn't need my bracket getting busted that early though. I forget what this coach's son's name was, who used to play at Duke, which was kind of funny. I think he had the shot there at the end to win it and just like went off the glass wrong. Zahn did what he could at the end after, I forget, I feel like it was RJ trying to shoot them out the game. But Zahn came back clutch. I think Cam Reddish hit a 3 late in that game. Obviously the play was Zahn driving in on Tacofo, drawing the foul, and then getting the M1. I feel like he missed the free throw, if I remember correctly. But regardless, that was a great game. Another kind of random one was the Texas A&M comeback against Northern Iowa, I believe, who could very well be on here in their own right, because they had, I think, the Ali Farouk match. So that was, I think, my sophomore year of high school. So this was like 2011, I think. 2010, 2011, I forget exactly. Probably would be 2011. Would have been. Yeah, I think they went to Sweet 16 where they hit like the buzzer beater from like half court against Texas, and then the Farouk Manesh guy like went crazy in the second round, third round, whatever you want to call it, game to get them to Sweet 16. But yeah, so I'm looking it up now. Texas A&M comes back from down 12 points in 31 seconds, I believe. I'm not going to sit here and rewatch the game, but yeah, I'm pretty sure if YouTube is not lying to me, they overcame a 12-point deficit in 31 seconds, which is a collapse of epic proportions. Okay, so Texas A&M trailed by 10 into the final minute. Northern Iowa, I should say, went up 12 with 44 seconds, and then somehow the Texas A&M was able to force it to overtime, and then was able to win in double overtime, 92-88. But still, you're up 12. You can't. Okay, so yeah, you shouldn't be able to erase a 12-point deficit in 35 seconds. Like, that's a collapse of collapse. I remember why. I think shout out to Alex Caruso. I think he was on that Texas A&M team at the time. I remember watching that. I'm just like, how in the world is this possible? And it didn't make any sense. Another one. This was just like a great game in general. The UNC Kentucky game. Yeah, I think it was Malik Monk. They hit like the crazy shot to tie, and then like Luke May came down and hit the game winner on the other end. Shout out to him. I think I had UNC. Was that the year UNC won it? It might have been. Let me see what their tournament run looked like. Oh, it doesn't say. This isn't helpful. I know they beat Gonzaga, but I'm trying to remember how they got there. I want to say it was this game. I should have looked this up before. But yeah, so UNC, UK. So yeah, that was okay. It was the same year. That was the Elite Eight, 2017. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that game was nuts. Yeah, shout out to Luke May. I think I picked that one. My roommate had picked Kentucky, so that won me some money. So shout out to you. Also, shout out to Loyola Chicago. Marcus Towns. We went to the same high school. Don't really know him that well because he played basketball. I did not. But their Final Four one was nutty. Just because I think they hit at least like 2 or 3 buzzer beaters in that tournament run, which is nuts because that kind of like normally just doesn't happen. And also, I think that was the year where there was like mad upsets in that tournament. Yeah, they played Kansas State, the 9 seed in the Elite Eight, for a chance at the Final Four, which they obviously went to. But Where they faced, that was the Michigan team. I think that was the Mo Wagner team. Yeah. I forgot who they lost to in the championship. They lost to somebody. Oh no, that was. Oh, was that the? No, this was the same year. This was the same UNC year, I think, right? No, it was the year after. I'm bugging. But yeah, so I remember in the round of 64, they played the 6th seed Miami, and the guy hit a 3 from well behind the arc to win the game. We won by 2. Then they played Tennessee in the round 32, and they hit a jumper at the end to beat Tennessee by 1. Then in Nevada, I believe that was the year where Marcus Towns hit a 3 basically in the final minutes in order to kind of seal that victory. They straight by that. The only game they didn't play that was close was the Kansas State game where they kind of blew them out. Then they lost by a decent margin to Michigan, who I guess was just obviously a better team. But yeah, that's to have a run like that where you 3 straight games where they go down to the wire and you just barely escape, and then get to the Final Four for a school that wasn't really or isn't really that known for basketball. It's kind of impressive. I think they had, who was the older woman, Sister Jean? I believe she was kind of like the mascot's not the right word, but she was like the notable school figure from their story, which is like kind of a cool thing. But yeah, so I remember that one. That was so now I'm just curious who the 2018 basketball championship. Michigan played. That was Villanova. So that was the second Villanova one. That wasn't the Chris Jenkins one. So yeah, that was Dante DiVincenzo. He went crazy in this game. He had 30. Oh gosh, I forgot he had 31. He was like first round pick because of that game, basically. Basically, I mean, they said like Mikal Bridges and Spellman and excuse me. I think Pascal was on the team before. I know Mikal Bridges' book. I remember him playing as a freshman. And Bo Brunson was too, I believe. He was on the championship team, which we will get to in a moment. But yeah, so shout out to Loyola Chicago. That run was kind of crazy. But yeah, like I said, that whole bracket was busted because the 11 seed versus a 9 seed for the Final Four spot is kind of crazy when you really think about it. And then the other side was Kansas and Villanova. And then even Michigan was a 3 seed, which they don't always make it that far. So yeah, another regional. No. Yeah, so then so it was Loyola, Kansas State. Weird. Then it was Florida State, Michigan. I remember that. Oh, who was it? Oh, what? I think was it in the Loyola bracket that was like that Florida game? No, it wasn't. It was a different bracket. Or maybe no, that was the year before. There was like a Florida game where like the guy had like a 1 foot jump, like running jumper to tie it at the end of like overtime or whatever. I remember watching that game at a bar. Shout out Champs. Okay, and that one was kind of chalkish, and then the other two were kind of chalkish in terms of like the people that got there. But then you had 3 seed Michigan versus the 9 seed Florida State, and then obviously 11 seed Loyola Chicago versus the 9 seed Kansas State on that side. So that was a weird bracket lineup. Then there was the Florida Gulf Coast. I mean, there's been there's been a few big time upsets. Obviously, in this past decade, you had the TJ McCollum, shout out Lehigh, over Duke. Always fun when Duke loses. Everyone wins when Duke loses. But yeah, I was just going to talk about they didn't call them because they didn't call it Velocity. It was Dunk City, the Florida Gulf Coast team. Then they went to the Sweet 16 that year too. But I remember they surprised the heck out of Georgetown. Georgetown been on the bad end of a couple upsets, so that's unfortunate for them. But yeah, I remember that one. A completely random one, but I remember I think it was Georgia State. R.J. Hunter hit the 3 to it wasn't at the buzzer, but to win the game, and his dad was sitting in the rolling chair and fell out of it because he had hurt something. I think it was an ankle or something on his leg, and he was just so excited he just fell out of the chair. I just remember watching that visual. That's very funny. Great, that's the only game they won, but that was a funny visual. But yeah, so shout out Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast. They I forget. I'm trying to remember what year that was. So this was 2013. Yeah, they upset Georgetown. They beat them by 12. They beat them by 12. I'm trying to remember what happened after that. And then, they became the first 15 seed to win the first seed game. They lost in the Sweet 16 to Florida. Fair. And then their coach got hired to be USC. And they won best upset at the ESPY. So, shout out to Florida Gulf coach for that. But yeah, and I remember that game. Yeah, Georgetown had no idea what was going on. And then, not to be outdone, I don't even remember what UMBC stands for. But the one over the 16, which if you watch, or if you pay attention to Pilot Tour, he's always been around the horn. He's been University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He's been talking about how one is going to lose to 16 at some point, and I don't think he picked it. Or if he did pick it, because you always pick one, and he probably picked the wrong one. But yeah, shout out to UMBC. And then they smoked Virginia too. It wasn't even like it was like, oh, they barely scraped by, they won on the buzzer. No, they won by 20. It was absurd. And then I remember their social media team was funny. So shout out to them. But then I think UVA came back the next year and won the tournament. So it's like, hey, there's that at least. But yeah, shout out to them. That was obviously a memorable moment. I mean, I don't know how many times we're ever going to see a 1 beat a 16. Oh, a 16 beat a 1, I should say. Obviously, we see the 1 beat the 16 every other time in the history of the NCAA tournament. But this time it didn't happen. So shout out to UMBC. And then last but not least, obviously, I mean, I could talk about the Gordon Hayward missed 3. Not going to talk about that because Duke won. We all lose when Duke wins, so we only talk about when Duke loses on this podcast. Even though, I mean, he just barely missed it, too. And then they went back the next year, still lost. Oh, yeah. Well, I guess because part of this was in the last decade, but just the Shabazz Napier UConn run, that kind of was basically the same thing as the Kemba Walker UConn run. That was kind of weird. How they, basically had a point guard, a veteran point guard, they kind of led the team out of nowhere, because they weren't supposed to be that good, into a national championship. So yeah, but then like I said, last but not least is the Villanova UNC game. You all know what game. It's unfortunate for Marcus Page because he hit the shot that was maybe more impressive than the game winner, but no one remembers that or really cares because it's like the Tim Duncan shot before the Derek Fisher .4 shot. It's like no one really remembers the what happened before an amazing shot. They just remember the amazing shot. Especially if it wins a game, what happened before doesn't matter. It's like no one really cares that LeBron helped lead the Heat back in that game 6. All they care about is that Ray Allen hit the 3, and that's what they're like. Ray Allen saved his legacy. Which did he? Yes, because if you miss a 3, then obviously that's a big deal. But again, LeBron was very vital to helping them get to that, and then also that forced them to overtime, so to win that and then win Game 7. So LeBron did enough for his own legacy in that series. But again, no one cares about anything else before it if they just all you remember is the big shot. So obviously everyone just remembers Chris Jenkins, especially the play that they ran. It was well designed, well drawn up, and it worked to perfection. When perfection, something like that is something, when a play is executed perfectly and doesn't matter the sport, it's always impressive. So, I mean, yeah, Villanova was an easy pick there for easy one of the most memorable things. Like I said, there's a lot of other things that could have been talked about in this. And I even named a good amount, but there's so many other games, and unfortunately for me, Penn State has not been that good. They were going to be in the tournament this year, and of course, a pandemic, so who knows when I'll see that happen again. But it's easier when you have a college team that's good because you have more memories involved. But since I'm just watching just to watch, because again, I mean everyone's watching just to watch, but since I have no dog in any of these fights other than who I picked to win a championship and money's on the line. I have no emotional investment tending the schools because my team's always sorry when it comes to college basketball. Obviously, if you're a Kentucky fan, you have a lot of stories. If you're a Duke fan, you have a lot of stories. They just won the one championship. The Jahlil Okafor, Tyus Jones, or maybe no, did they win 2? No, because they beat Butler, and then the Tyus Jones, Grayson Allen, Justice Winslow, Jahlil Okafor team. They won 1 too. So you got that. UNC's got a couple. They obviously got the redemption after the shot. Villanova's going to win a couple. Virginia got the redemption. Kentucky Kentucky didn't have one, but they had that really nice run with Julius Randle where they beat Wichita State. That was a tough draw. I knew that was going to happen. I felt bad for Wichita State. Go undefeated, and then you lose to the 9 seed in the second round, or 8 or 9 seed, whatever it was. Or you have the Kentucky team with Kat and Cauley Stein and Devin Booker. They lost to Frank Kaminsky and Sam Decker. Which, in hindsight, is kind of funny. But, that Wisconsin team was really good. So no harm in that. But yeah, like I said, this is many moments in the last decade. And hopefully there'll be many more in this next decade outside this year because, obviously, no tournament. But hopefully once it picks back up next year when we don't have a pandemic, fingers crossed, then we'll be back to recreating some of these amazing moments that we missed out on this past year. But yeah, so since there was no game, no tournament, no national championship, and it was supposed to be this week, I thought I would kind of go down memory lane, talk about some of my favorite moments or favorite things that I remember from the tournament in the past decade. And obviously you guys will have other things that I didn't mention that I should have. Because again, it's hard to just pick a few when there's been so many crazy games, shots, performances, moments, all that stuff. So feel free to tweet them at me. You can find us on social media, so Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can talk about them there. We can discuss the ones I missed. You can talk about why you think the Brandin Cooks trade is good for both sides. I kind of talk about how it's not a lose-lose because again, if Brandin Cooks is good, then the Texans win. But it's on paper, it seems a little odd. You talk about how you feel about that fan poll, about like again, small sample size, but how Americans are really going to be willing to go back without a vaccine, which makes sense to me. But maybe you're on the fence and you don't even believe the virus is real. We can talk about it. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to talk about all that stuff. But I'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. As always, I want to thank you guys for listening, taking time out of your day to listen to me talk about random things in the sports world. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top when we drop our latest stuff. You could please as well give us a 5-star rating, write us a review. Be very appreciated, very helpful. See if you guys like, what you guys dislike, all that fun stuff. Also, I said a little bit earlier, but shout out to all the essential workers. Whether you think you're essential or not, your services are appreciated by me. Maybe not by everybody, but at least by me. So that's nurses, doctors, grocery store people. I think banks are still open. If they're not, then sorry. But if they are, then shout out to you. Especially the grocery store people, because I mean, they, in theory, don't really have to be doing the job of doctors and nurses. They kind of have to, but grocery store people, you could shut that down or just have it. But they're not, because people need to eat, which I understand. But shows in them because everybody just congregates there these days, and now they're not as happy because everything's out and all that stuff. So I know they're going through a rough time. So shout out to them. That's why all the jobs that don't get paid that much are now apparently needed. So that's kind of funny when you think about people talking about, oh, they should get a different job or get a better job. And I'm like, well, they're the only job one of the few jobs that's actually running during this pandemic. So there is that. And they can't even work from home. But yeah, so shout out to you. Shout out to everybody that's helping out in this pandemic. Hopefully get through it sooner than later and we're back to our normal lives. Well, not before because it's been a while. But again, sooner than later. And before 2021. That'd be nice. Because if it's not before 2021, that means no football. And we can't have that. So, yeah, that'll do it for me here today. I've been Chris Blades. That has been my time. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.